Hello Mayans and welcome back to my channel. Or if this is your first time watching, I'm Blvd Maia, and I talk about everything in my asexual, transgender, lesbian life that you would really like to know about but are afraid to ask. And this week I want to have a little fun because lately my topics have been a little heavy. And who needs more doom and gloom during a pandemic? I know I don't. However, I am going to get there in a roundabout way, so if you'll bear with me, just hold on. And we're going to start with that as I'm recording this, last week was the 10-year anniversary of me coming out as transgender. So a full-on decade of me realizing that I'm actually the person you see in front of you right now. And a few weeks ago, as I saw that day coming closer and closer, I wondered, how am I going to feel on that day? And it turns out the answer to that was actually very melancholy, very ambivalent. And frankly, that really surprised me. I thought there would be at least a little bit of joy surrounding that, but then it occurred to me, you know what? Being transgender is very traumatic. And so many of us, as you can see from these polls that I ran, would not choose to be transgender if we had the choice of being cisgender. And of course, I mean the cisgender versions of our true gender identities. And a part of myself really finds that quite sad because I know that if I were to redo my life, I would want to be a lesbian again. I like that part of my new life quite a lot, but this time as a cisgender lesbian. And I know that the last 10 years for me have been a time of overcoming past trauma. And so perhaps it isn't surprising that I would feel that way and that many of you might feel that way too. However, as I looked at the last 10 years, I also realized that, quite a lot of funny things also happened to me along the way. A lot of things that are unique to the transgender experience. So this is where we get to the actual funny part. You kind of have to laugh at yourself along this journey if you're going to survive. And this is a topic that I myself have explored in past videos, like the one where I talked about farting for the first time post-op, and what an eye-opening experience that was. Or forgetting that my chest now had two sensitive breasts on them that I had to be mindful of because a cargo net snapping up at them wouldn't be the most comfortable thing. But I do have other stories, and I asked some of you to send me some of your stories. So I'm going to start with a story from one of my best friends, Dawn Ennis. Before coming out, I took part in a Coney Island parade in which a float of cis lesbians and I all dressed up as mermaids and wore sequins and glitter, and some of us were on rollerblades. Okay, that's quite a sight. And after, I changed and drove to a cousin's barbecue in New Jersey, along with very bright eyeshadow and mascara. You'd have thought maybe I'd look in the mirror just once, but I was rushing, and let's just say I was definitely the talk of the party. Clothing and makeup snafus. They're always the bane of our existence. That reminds me of the time when I was looking for a party dress a few years ago. It was a few days before my birthday, so I went out to a Marshall's and I tried on all these dresses. And I found one that I really, really liked. And I put it on, took a photo, and then sent it to all my friends, not realizing that I had the dress on backwards. I just thought that it had like a low cut in front. I didn't know. Sometimes women's clothes are a little hard to figure out. I probably should have looked at both sides before I put on the dress. And Grace Lowe brings us another mishap with female accoutrement. I was making a pizza once in a really hot oven. I opened the oven door to see if it was done and or needed rotating. I wanted to just peek in so I wouldn't lose too much heat. I instantly singed the front of one of my favorite wigs. I quickly ran into my bedroom so no guests would see it. Then I had to dodge questions for the rest of the evening about why I changed wigs. I could imagine that was very awkward. Now, lest you all think I'm just gonna tell stories from trans women, I do have a couple trans guy friends who sent me in stories too. And this one comes to me from Ryan Casada, who you may know as a musician and also a fellow YouTuber. One time I was hanging out with my cis dude friends at a diner after a show, and I was in the bathroom with my friend, and he said as I was coming out of the stall, "Ryan, isn't it weird that there are no dividers between the urinals?" And I was like, bro, I have never used a urinal in my life. He forgot I was trans. And isn't that just great when people forget what your history is and just accept you for who you are? And to add a little more representation, I actually also have a story about a non-binary person sent in from her trans woman friend. I was standing in front of Walmart collecting donations for marching band with my non-binary friend. This was 4 years ago, and people got so confused by us. Over the course of a few hours, we got called boys, girls, a couple, and somebody called us cheerleaders because that is what she thought we were raising money for. Wow, yeah. I imagine that could be very confusing for cisgender folks who come upon us and are not familiar with the variety of our identities. And sometimes it's kind of fun to play around with that. And if it happens to tweak the expectations of cisgender people, all the better. For instance, my credit card has a picture of my son on it, as you can see. And this was many years ago when he was small and cuter. And as you can imagine, I've gotten quite a few comments on it over the years. But I remember one particular time I was in a restaurant with a bunch of trans women. And when the waitress came by, we all handed her our credit cards to pay the bill. And she picked up my credit card and she looked at it and she goes, "Oh my gosh, is this your son?" I said, "Yes, it is." And she replied, "He looks just like you." And I said, "I know, right? Now I know what I would have looked like if I'd been a boy." And of course, the whole table just started laughing and she just looked confused. Now, another bathroom story comes from a trans woman, and she wrote, "The first time I was so busy on my iPhone that I neglected to notice I had sauntered into a men's room at LaGuardia Airport. My condolences for going to LaGuardia." You ever been there? Terrible airport. The kind where there's no door and precious little signage. A dude said to me, making me look up from my phone, "Hey lady, you're in the wrong restroom." That's when I also spotted the wall of urinals and the guys giving me a dirty look. I was both embarrassed and very happy to be called out as the woman I am. Isn't that awesome? Yes, that appreciation can come out in weird ways sometimes. I was once called a bitch by somebody in the middle of a fight, and I was like, oh my god, he called me a bitch. But the next time I wasn't so happy. And the story I'm going to end on is by Jay, and he's a trans guy who's been in some of my previous videos. And he says, "One time when I was working at Tree which by the way, what a great name for a company, doing mulch work with another guy, my packer fell out and I didn't notice. He looks at me and goes, 'Dude, how did dildo get here?' I went, 'Whoops, that's mine,' and picked it up and put it in my pocket and looked at him and went, 'Well, you just saw my dick.'" You know, I can't imagine the embarrassment of that situation, but I gotta commend you on the smoothness of your reply. Because I would have just like died right there and then let him bury me with all the leaves, and then that would have been the end of it. I would not have been able to come up with a reply nearly as cool as yours. Good going, Jay. So I hope that you all enjoyed those stories, and if you have any you might like to add, please put them in the comments below. And as always, my social media is also down below, and if you have a dime to spare, please consider supporting what I do by giving to my Patreon. And on that note, please like my video by giving it a thumbs up, please share this video, and please subscribe, and see you around the interwebs.